Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle. Exploration gives us the sense that anything is possible. Exploration leads to knowledge and understanding, and it means that you make the world a better place as you explore. People have always tried to leave the world a better place for future generations, and exploration is one way we can do that. Today, we will be exploring the Great Smoky Mountains. We will find cascading waterfalls, roaming wildlife, and a view that stretches out over 500,000 acres. This is the country's most visited national park. During today's adventure, we will learn more about a place, a tribe, and an event that changed history. Before we set out on this journey, take a few seconds to clear your mind. John Muir, the famous naturalist, said, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks." As we explore nature today, focus on what was, what is, and what is to come. All right, let's get started. The Cherokee Indians are the largest tribe in the United States. The name Cherokee comes from a Muskogean word that means speakers of another language. The Cherokee lived in wattle and dab homes. This was a material traditionally used in building walls. It consisted of a network of interwoven sticks and twigs that were covered with mud or clay. These homes were framed with tree logs and then covered with mud and grass to fill in the walls. The roofs were made of thatch or bark. The Cherokee farmed, hunted, and gathered. They were able to grow corn, squash, and beans, and they hunted deer, rabbits, turkey, and sometimes even bears. The Cherokee traveled by foot or by canoe. They traveled rivers and streams between their villages. They made their canoes by hollowing out large tree logs. The Cherokee were also a religious people who believed in spirits. One of their celebrations was called the Green Corn Ceremony, which thanked the spirits for their harvest of corn. Trail of Tears was the Cherokee name for what the Americans called the Indian removal. During the 1800s, the U.S. government created an Indian territory in Oklahoma and told all of the eastern Native American tribes that they had to go live there. Some tribes willingly agreed to do this, but other tribes didn't want to go, and the American Army forced them. It was a very dark time in our history. The Cherokee tribe was one of the largest eastern tribes, and they didn't want to leave their homeland. The Cherokees were also peaceful allies of the Americans, so they asked the Supreme Court for help. The judges decided the Cherokee Indians could stay in their homes, but the President, Andrew Jackson, sent the army to march the Cherokees to Oklahoma anyway. They weren't prepared for the journey, and it was wintertime. Thousands of Cherokee Indians died on the Trail of Tears. Many Native Americans from other tribes died too. You can learn more about the Cherokee and the Trail of Tears at Cherokee's outdoor drama, Unto These Hills. Unto These Hills drama is the tragic and triumphant story of the Cherokee that traces back to the years before the heartbreak of the Trail of Tears to the present day. Despite this dark and terrible episode in the lives of the Cherokee, the ending of the play shows that the Cherokee people are people whose spiritual fortitude and human courage will never be broken. The Cherokee practiced the balance of life, partly through the preservation of their crafts and culture. These Cherokee craft traditions are taught to each new generation. This balance between old and new is found in Cherokee schools and in community workshops.
Now, when these ladies make their pottery, they use native clay, which is found along the river banks in this area just under the topsoil. They use two different methods when they make their pottery. First would be the ball method, which you see here. That was used to make the smaller pieces of pottery that you would see. What they'll do is they'll start off with a small ball of clay, using their thumb and forefinger, and they'll work it out to the desired shape that they want. The second method would have been the coil method. Now this was used for making your larger pottery that you could see. Alright, and what they'll do is they'll start with a small flat disc here, well not small, about average size. Take your coils, stack them one on top of the other. Once you have that done, you can smooth this out by hand. Once you have that, you'd sit it out in the sun until it became firm enough to work with. Now we take a metal tool, go along the inside to get the desired thickness that we wanted. Now before the metal tools, we would have used a C-shell. Now once you wanted to put your designs on your pottery, you could use a wooden paddle with the designs already carved into it, and you would press that along your pottery to get your design. We would also carve into a deer's antler also. Use a seashell once again for the natural grooves that it has in it, a sharpened stick, or a carved out wooden knot fossil. Do you have any questions?
Young Cherokee have the opportunity to learn the art of Cherokee basket weaving, pottery, beadwork, wood carving, and other traditional Cherokee crafts.
The Civilian Conservation Corps was established in 1933. It was part of a massive government effort initiated by President Franklin Roosevelt to get people back to work during the Great Depression. More than 2,600 camps were established in rural areas all across America, and over 3 million people were put to work.
Virginia, inspiring his forest army by a personal visit, President Roosevelt makes his first tour of the Civilian Conservation Corps camps in the Shenandoah Valley.
The boys of the CCC, who eventually became known as Roosevelt's Tree Army, did a wide range of public works projects. The focus of their efforts was on reclaiming land that had been damaged by logging and mining and building recreation infrastructure. Even today, CCC-built picnic shelters, campgrounds, and trails are in use in every state in the nation. For many of the boys, their trip to a CCC camp was their first trip away from home. They were given room, board, and $30 a month, $25 of which was automatically sent back to their families. Their tasks included everything from planting trees to building fire towers. In addition to the program's huge contribution to forest health and recreation, the CCC also served as a social melting pot that brought together young men from all over the country. Many completed their basic education in the camps. About 40,000 youth learned to read and write in a camp. 100 camps were established in Pennsylvania between 1933 and 1941. Eventually employing 160,000 people. They planted over 50 million trees and built more than 6,300 miles of roads and trails, nearly 100 small dams, and 86 fire towers. The remains of the CCC camp that operated at Leetonia can be seen near here, and there are many places throughout the state park and forest system where facilities built by the CCC are still in use.
had a great time at Cades Cove. Did you know that Cades Cove is one of the most visited areas in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park? We found historic cabins and churches, we saw a grist mill and a cantilever barn, and we were very lucky to find a wide variety of animals. So let's talk about those first. On July 7, 1934, the Assistant Chief Ranger of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park sent a message to his employees requesting a census or a count of the park's wildlife populations. According to the 1934 Wildlife Report, this park contained approximately 100 black bears. The number of white-tailed deer was estimated at only 18. Today, the Smokies is home to an estimated 1,600 black bears. Let me break it down for you. That is 2 bears for every square mile. And as far as white-tailed deer go, our visit to Cades Cove today showed us that they were alive and doing well. The 1934 report put the wild turkey population at 315. Today, turkeys are a common sight in the Smokies. We found quite a few hanging around in the fields and playing at a local campground. We also saw some amazing great blue heron in the rivers and streams throughout the park. They looked hungry, but we didn't see them find their lunch. Maybe next time. The National Park Service also reintroduced peregrine falcons to the Smokies after they disappeared in 1943. So park managers became parents. They began raising and releasing young peregrines in the park. They call this process hacking. All of the park's wildlife reintroduction projects over the last 2 decades have started out as experiments to decide if the species is compatible with the park's natural and human landscape. Well, we can tell you we think they are compatible. On a good day, you can see all of the above animals in Cades Cove. It is 11 miles of untouched land that takes you back in time. But Cades Cove was not always a place to just visit for a day. It used to be a place to live. Back in the 1800s, many families worked and played in the Cades Cove Valley. We also know that before they came there, Cherokee Indians traveled throughout the valley to hunt the abundant deer, elk, bison, and bears. So these settlers arrived in the cove in the early 1820s. They immediately began building houses and barns and clearing the land because they had to eat, so they wanted to farm. The land was great for crops, especially corn. Family and faith were important to the settlers of the cove, so they built 2 churches there in the 1820s. By mid-century, there were 685 people living in the cove. Some households had 10 to 12 children. In order to provide for all of these folks, they had to build more buildings. And as far as school goes, well, they met in homes first, and later on, they built schoolhouses. The community came together and they built grist mills, smokehouses, and other community buildings. So, what happened to Cades Cove? Tennessee and North Carolina decided to purchase some land so that a national park could be created. So they combined their monies, and the first big piece of land they purchased was, you got it, Cades Cove. And that was in 1927. Several of the families were very happy and gladly sold their land and moved. Mr. John Oliver, not so much. He actually went to court a few times to fight it, but he lost. For those who just did not want to leave, they were given the opportunity to sign life leases. This basically meant that they could live on the land for the rest of their lives. These people didn't get as much money as the ones that left, And they also had to follow some rules that the National Park Service set up. They had restrictions on logging, trapping, and hunting. Because so many people left the cove, there was no longer a need for the community, so the school and post offices closed, and Cades Cove became empty. Today, the National Park manages and maintains Cades Cove just like it looked in the days of the early settlers. And back in 1945, the National Park Service designated Cades Cove as a historical area. They restored several of the older log cabins and barns. Today, you can spend a full day or just a few hours checking out Cades Cove now and then. So let's talk about fireflies. Why do they synchronize? No one really knows why the fireflies flash together. One theory is that males are competing and they all want to be the first to flash. Or another theory is that if the males all flash at once, they'll have a better chance of being noticed. Not sure about that. The tens of thousands of lightning bugs gather in swarms and flash in harmony as the entire forest alternates between light and darkness. Right here in the Smoky Mountains, near the Elkmont campground, is the largest population of synchronous fireflies in the Western Hemisphere. So, are they fireflies or lightning bugs? Well, people commonly call these amazing creatures fireflies or lightning bugs, depending on where you live. But did you know they are actually small flying beetles with an abdomen that lights up? There are over 2,000 species of the bioluminescent beetles in the world. That's 125 in North America alone. And the Great Smoky Mountains National Park boasts 19 of those species. Although it takes the lightning bugs 1 to 2 years to mature from larvae into adults, the actual lifespan of an adult firefly is extremely short. In fact, adult fireflies only live 2 to 3 weeks, and once they become an adult, they don't eat anymore. But why do they flash? The distinct flashing pattern of the synchronous fireflies is really difficult to describe and nearly impossible to photograph or catch on film. The pattern includes 5 to 8 bursts of light in a very short time period, followed by complete darkness for about 5 seconds. The light they emit, which produces no heat, is due to a chemical reaction of luciferin and oxygen, and we have said it's used to attract a mate. Every place has a story. Thanks for listening to this one. I'll leave you with this. What stories can you tell about the place where you live? We must tell our stories now so that those in the future will know. Be a good human. Until next time, this is Dr. Drizzle.